time. Now they have them online. You skip the snacks. You skip the games where you could win a toothbrush holder or a pot scraper. You skip all that, and they go straight for your wallet. And this is still called a party. The federal government does that. But what do we think about in terms of the church? Give me that old-time religion. Give me those old-time flashcards. This was a 20th century version of Deuteronomy 6:7. When you're lying down, when you're walking by the way, when you lay down at night, when you sit, when you stand, when you walk. I mean, we did these flashcards. We studied these things. And they were just basically 5x8 index cards, black and white, no cartoon characters, nothing. Just a Bible question on the front and an answer on the back. But they're the reason that I know the 10 plagues in order to this day. They're so much a part of me. I found, one day, my brothers and sisters were helping me with this flashcards. We were studying them at night before bed. And there was a particularly hard one. It said, who was Jacob's twin brother? And I did that thing where, you contort your face in a lot of different ways. And you snap your fingers and you go, oh. And it never really works, but it buys you time. So finally, they started giving me little subtle hints like, it rhymes with seesaw. And I said, oh yeah, Behal. Sounds about right. Sounds like a Bible name to me. And I'll never live that one down. But I found some of these in the teacher workroom one day. The teacher workroom, that's a lesson within itself. I mean, people will say, what do you think the greatest problem in the church is? And we say, maybe it's a flippancy about marriage. Maybe it's worldliness. Maybe it's materialism. I think, right up there close to the top is the teacher workroom. That thing's a monster because we spend so much time creating these visuals that we just can't part with them. And so you've got these colonial characters in there that go on a bulletin board that somebody 100 years ago did with a magic marker and it's faded in the sun, and they all have osteoporosis because they're all been over like this. And there's this heavy filing cabinet, and I pulled open the drawer, and there were these cards. And the rubber band around them was dry rotted. But it was just a moment with those cards. Just holding those cards close to me, realizing this is so much of who I am. This is what, I have so much to go in Bible knowledge, but what little I have, it goes back to this. And so, I'm never through learning. We still need to learn. The flashcard idea doesn't go away when we are children. And so we think about, are we still concentrating on the Bible knowledge? I mean, the days of black and white cards are gone. I applaud the new and the brilliant. They've been replaced with full color workbooks. And, animations and black lights with neon. And I love anything that will lead a child's heart to God and that will cause him to internalize truths that he will apply throughout his lifetime. How is it that we miss that? How is it that we're way more concerned about baby Einstein video clips, that we'll hold a phone to the womb here and think that we're going to have a genius because we're starting early? How is it that we take a kid to the baseball diamond before he knows first base from cheese crackers, and we think he is really going to have a shot at the MLB now because we're starting early? What kind of circus is that out there The only reason they know which way to face with the bat is because there's an adult there shaping his arm this way and pulling his shoulder up this and bending him this way. And the first thing he hits is that person with the bat. And then the day he finally hits the ball, he goes, wow. And you say, run. And he takes off to third base. And you say, no, not that way, the other way. He runs to the pitcher. And we think that we're starting them early, and so they're going to have a great success at this. How is it that we miss that starting them early with the Bible, pat the Bible, 1, 2, 3? Don't think that's not important for these little ones that I can point out here. I can tell you think it's important. Look where you are. Look where they are. But it's not just about the children. I've seen some pretty interesting curricula out there for adults, let me tell you. I like to go, when I travel, I like to pick up literature and see what's going on in the church. Not just the classes, all of it. It's just interesting to me. And 99% of it is wonderful and gives me courage in my heart and encouragement about what's going on in the church. But sometimes there are some interesting things. I was somewhere where they had the list of the Bible classes, and there was growing coffee was one of the classes you could choose. Another time my son was practicing in a gym, and I looked at their material while he was practicing, and they had the class choices, and one of them was flower arranging. And I thought, really? What kind of flowers, I wonder? Mandrakes? Fig leaves? Has to be some connection, right? And then there was, we know that there have been a lot of curricula based on sitcoms, which I don't know enough to say yay or nay about that, but I promise, we've had Andy Griffith, we've had the Brady Bunch. I promise that I was in a thrift store, and I bought this to prove it. There was this curriculum there, Bible class curriculum from Napoleon Dynamite. What are we thinking? There was one bulletin that said, current events class. Might be good. There's a lot of things in current events that we can address, but here's what it said. It said, everybody just bring an article from a magazine or a newspaper that you've seen this week and we'll discuss it. Without any preparation from the teacher about that. And then I saw one, and it said fasting as one of the choices. And I thought, finally, a Bible topic in this list. And then it said, the fasting class will meet this Wednesday at Cracker Barrel. I guess you can only do it for so long. I don't know. I guess I'm just thinking out loud here, but wouldn't it be a good idea in Bible class to study, the Bible? The Bible. Because the Bible is our only hope of salvation. Let's use the time the best that we can. I want you to turn to a passage in Hosea 4 and 6. You're familiar with it. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, it starts. That's the part we know. There's another verse in Romans that says, my people perish. This is what this one says. That one says, they have a zeal, but not according to knowledge. Both are good. Zeal is so necessary. That's the motivation to do the right thing. But knowledge is what makes you know what the right thing is. Zeal is great, and I would almost rather have zeal without knowledge than knowledge without zeal. But you have to have both to know what your zeal is about. Hosea 4:6, my people perish for lack of knowledge. Isn't it true? I had the news on this morning, and it doesn't take very long to watch the news to know this is a crazy society. Society in our country even, and other countries as well, is, like Lizzie Borden on laughing gas. That's psychotic. And what is it that has caused this? People don't know the Bible, do they? I mean, 1962, God was taken out of schools. God was taken out before I came in to this country. So it's been going on a long time. You know, in our school, it wasn't really enforced for a long time. And we had little stories about the resurrection at Easter time, as denominations teach, and we had the Lord's Prayer and things like that. But it's largely been taken out. And, you know, you have Jeopardy, 3 o'clock every day. Is this recorded or not? Is our live streamed or anything, Holly? Just making sure before I go on. It is recorded. Okay. All right, so Jeopardy comes on every day, 3 o'clock. We try to make it for that, you know, if I'm at home at all. And most days I do miss it. But when you get to watch Jeopardy, those people know everything. They know it all. I mean, they can tell you, like, sometimes I don't even understand the question. But they can tell you who a cabinet member was in an administration in a country that I've never heard of, that I couldn't find on the map. I mean, the only thing I know is the continent that it's on, possibly. But they cannot tell you the Bible answers. In fact, they avoid that Bible column. I'm glad that column's still there, by the way. I mean, it's the only thing that gets me any points in my head. But that Bible column, they avoid it like it's an obvious case of the shingles. I mean, it is dead last of what they choose. And they know everything else. And then they can't answer the questions. They can't tell you who was thrown in a lion's den. And that's if you say it starts with a D and it rhymes with spaniel. They can't do it. They just don't know. It's exactly like in Jonah's time in the city of Nineveh. It says that the people didn't know their right hand from their left. You know, that's the world. That's the society we live in. That's our culture. But really, when you look at Hosea 4:6, what are the first 2 words of that verse? My people. My people. This isn't talking about society. This isn't talking about the world. It's saying this can happen to us, my people. You say, well, that's a good thing that was the Israelites, and that was the Old Testament. But what does it mean for us today? Turn to 1 Peter 2, 9 and 10. You are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, my people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, who once were not a people. See, I already said it, I'm not an Israelite. Who once were not a people, but now are the people of God. Who once had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. My people. This is about you and me. And what can happen? My people are destroyed. It's not that there are less here than there should be, or that they're weak, or, you know, their preacher's kind of boring, or anything like that. It's my people are destroyed. Complete destruction. Why? Because of knowledge. Lack of knowledge. It's not. You know, if we look at this chapter and we see the context, yes, everything evil is unfolding here. Everything is happening to God's people. Sinful. But he says, here's the problem. Here's why they're destroyed. Here's why all this has occurred. For lack of knowledge, they're just not picking up their Bible enough. They're just not unrolling that scroll, are they? And then it gets kind of scarier as you read more. He says, I will reject you from being priests for me. And you say, oh, well, that's good because, you know, priests. Those are the guys with a black shirt and they have a little white square at the neck of it. And I don't wear that, so I'm good. Go back to 1 Peter 2, 9 and 10 again. What does it say? A royal priesthood. See, in those days, they were probably better off in this verse than we are, because we are the priest. In those days, the priest had to offer the sacrifice for the people. Not so for us. We have a direct line to God. You know, the veil of the temple was torn in two at the cross. You didn't have to stand on this side of the curtain while the priest went in there for you. We have a direct line to God now. Let me ask you, if you have a conversation on your cell phone with somebody and only your end of it is working, do you have a direct line? And so when God rejects us from being priests, we don't have that direct line anymore. Look at the passage again in 1 Peter. A royal priesthood and his own special people. It's the same thing. And so when we're rejected from being priests, we're rejected from being his own special people. That's not the worst part of the verse. Sounds like it would be, but if you continue reading, it says, and since you have forgotten the law of your God, I also will forget your children. Oh no, that's too harsh. That's unloving. How could God say that? Well, let me tell you, it's harsh and it's unloving on our part if we allow this to happen to our children. God is giving us an alarming picture here and an alarming warning of this is going to happen. If you want to opt for flower arranging and growing coffee, that's fine and good. But understand that the consequences will not be limited to your generation. If we don't teach our children, nobody else is going to do it. And if we don't know, how can we teach? So, flower arranging? Good. I mean, I have no problem. In fact, it's more than okay. It's wonderful if women want to get together here in the building somewhere and someone very talented wants to teach them how to arrange flowers. Because, you know, there was a woman in Mark 14 who came to Jesus with a sweet-smelling ministry. She's commended for that. Flowers can minister to people in a way that sometimes nothing else can. So I'm all for it. Coffee? It's okay if it tastes like something else. You can do that these days. But the Bible, better. I'm saying that we have set aside precious little time as it is, a couple of hours a week, where we come together. I hope that's not the only time for Bible study, but where we actually come together to learn from one another as we learn from God's Word, the Bible, direction for our life. Let's put that first and bring back the Bible facts, whether they're on flashcards or in any way that we can consume them, most especially from the pages of this book. But give me that old-time joy bus and some cottage meetings too. What did that stand for? Evangelism. We knew that if someone said, I have a cottage meeting, that was a code word. That meant a Bible study. Whoever lived in a cottage but Hansel and Gretel? I mean, we don't use the word cottage unless it's beside cheese. And so if someone said cottage meeting, that meant they had a Bible study with someone. And the joy bus. I'm not sure what the joy was, but for us, we would lay down in our dresses on the floor of that thing, and it had a hole. Ours had a hole in it. And we'd watch that road and see who could do that the longest without throwing up. If we were good at the end, we got a Chico stick. Oh yeah, maybe that's what the joy was, right? But let me tell you about a particular cottage meeting. See, to these cottage meetings, people would take a cylinder, my parents would, little cylinder, and inside that was a film strip and a record album and a light projector. And I'm sure people thought they were going to some kind of psychedelic party, but they went in there and I mean, we still call these things, they've been changed over to VHS and then to DVD. But what do we call them? The film strips. To a generation that doesn't even know what film strips is. But we say the film strips. And there was this record, and it would tell, starting with the patriarchal age, you would have 5 cottage meetings. And the first time the patriarchal age, and then the Mosaic, and then it would go into the Christian, and then it would go into the plan of salvation. And I mean, I would be surprised if there wasn't somebody sitting in this room who was either converted through these film strips or through, or their parents were, or their grandparents were. They were pretty successful. What happened to that? Let me tell you about one time that Laura and Jeff were at one of these cottage meetings. The record played, and it would say ding, and the lights are off. You didn't have the kind of slide projector we have now. You had the kind that you turn, ding, ding. Every time it dinged, you turned to the next picture. And so you had the teacher, and then you usually have what we call the silent partner. Somebody to go along for support, somebody to help with the kids, somebody to just say, yeah, this is what really happened here. You know, a silent partner, so you didn't go at it alone. So Jeff was teaching, and Laura was the silent partner. And they were watching this film strip. But this house, to say it had a mouse in it would be such an understatement. There were mice everywhere. And they were running across the floor and running across the couch and running across the table, and one was going up the tea jar, she said. And one was riding around on the record player. Whee! And Laura just tried to stay composed as much as she could. And she was fine until she was sitting here and a mouse ran across her hand. And so get the idea. The lights are out. The projector's going. Laura's between the projector and the wall. And you know you can make all kinds of little animals with... Okay, she says, "Ah!" So she's projected 10 times bigger than she is on the wall. And Jeff looks at her and says, "Well, Laura?" And, I mean, what do? Do you say it was a mouse at the expense of embarrassing those people? Do you just make something up at the expense of your soul? And plus, I mean, who could make up something now, even though the mice's jaws were hanging open now? So she does what the rest of us would probably do. She straightens her skirt, and she sits back down, and she goes, "I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me." I think it was a mouse. Give me that. Give me those good times. Give me that joy buzz. Give me those cottage meetings. You know, they've slipped into the retro realm, but evangelism cannot be something that we allow to slip into the retro realm. Are final words important to you? I'm talking about somebody on this earth and their final words. We took turns taking care of my mother in those last week or so of her life. And it just happened to be my turn. And she had these lucid moments, just for a little bit. And she talked to me just the way she always had, fully cognizant of everything. And she gave me some last words, some final words of what she knew I was going to be and what she knew my children were going to be. My daughter's here today. This is special. And some things that she wanted me to do, some things she wanted people to have. And I mean, when people are in their final words, do you just, change channels on the TV? Do you just flippantly look through something? No, I hung on to every word. And then the morphine took over, and she just slipped back into that subconscious reality. And I ran to get a piece of paper and a pen and started writing down everything that she said as best I could remember it, as fresh as it was on my mind. It's a warm piece of paper I still have. I don't get it out very much because it's very painful. Still. But I treasure that. I certainly don't usually share what's in it with anybody because it's a treasure between me and my mother. I did everything in it to the best of my ability. But those were her final words. Now, those aren't even important on a scale with the final words of our Lord and Savior. And I'm talking about words not on the cross, but words on this earth. What was the last thing he said before his ascension? Go into all the world and teach the gospel to every creature. Whoever believes and is baptized will be saved. Whoever does not believe will be condemned. In Matthew's version, he says, and continue to teach these things. Lo, I am with you even to the end of the world. So this was to continue our teaching other people. He said it to his apostles, but it was to continue until the end of the world. What are final, are they important to you? You know, but somebody must have skipped a day. In Acts 2, we see that the church begins. We see that the Lord is adding to the church every day, those who are being saved. So it's happening every day. People are teaching every day. In Acts 5, it says daily. But skipping a day, what happens when we skip a day? Isn't that usually, somebody must have skipped a day somewhere. Isn't that usually the way a deviation happens from something we do daily? Somebody will say, oh, I used to practice the piano every single day. I don't do that anymore. I should have kept that in practice. What happened? You skipped a day? I used to be on this diet. I adhered to it strictly. One day I skipped a day. It was hard to get back on it after that. Or, well, I hadn't seen so-and-so in years. I used to talk to her every day on the phone. You skipped a day somewhere, and it faded away. I don't know when somebody first skipped a day in evangelism, but it has turned into something that we used to do, something that we need to get back to for a lot of us. Hard things. People say, oh, it's just too hard. Let me tell you, evangelism is not really hard, but we have an enemy who will lie about anything that will keep somebody out of heaven, and he will tell you, he is convincing you that this is hard. Trigonometry, hard. Cleaning stables, hard. Changing out a transmission, hard. Evangelism is not that hard. I want to show you some things just for your entertainment here for a minute, and then we'll go somewhere with it. I love typos more than anybody, probably. I mean, I'm a writer. I'm not supposed to love them. But it's so great, Mississippi's literacy program. If you can't spell your own state. And so I'm going to make the English teachers cringe here for a minute. I took this picture myself when I visited the Rake County Museum. Number 8, sit down and be quiet. Quiet what? Sit down and be quiet. Noisy? Sit down and be quiet. Busy? Sit down. Sit down and be quiet what? Please flush 2 times. Well, twice. And then spelled right. Twice. Took that one myself too in a bathroom. It's too good. I couldn't not do it. And that's what we're getting to. The couldn't not. We remember all who have served. I think they were trying to honor their veterans that day. They missed it. And then this is my friend, Billy. This is a true story. I didn't have the actual picture. He's in charge of all the communication for a major technology company in Huntsville. This memo went out to everybody. Said, it's a wonder you don't find Depends at your car door now. And so, English teachers, forgive me, but evangelism is so hard, so easy, that you can't not do it. because Acts 4:20 says, we can't help it. We cannot but speak the things which we have heard and seen. Have you heard the gospel? Have you seen the change it makes in your life? You've got to tell other people. It's not a hard thing. Think about the news of a cure. If we had a cure for cancer, I mean, I want to go to heaven so much, if not for the reason only that there's no cancer in heaven. Every life in here has been touched in one way or another by someone close to you or yourself having cancer, trying to defeat this awful, awful disease. Now, suppose that we found a cure for cancer. Suppose that I went to a symposium somewhere and they said it's as easy as taking this pill. It's as easy as doing this. Would I tell anybody? Would I say, oh, that's so wonderful? And then a week later I'd say, oh, I forgot to tell anybody about that. I've been so busy. No, I would tell everyone. I would say, why are we keeping this information here? Let's get it out in every form of media that we can. And let me for sure call all my friends that have cancer and tell them. I don't mean to be flippant about cancer at all because it's hurt my family. But it's a party compared to sin and its consequences. Because sin has affected every life. And sin has separated everybody from God without this cure. Without this cure, there's no hope of heaven, and it's an eternal condition. Man, grave is the victory for a Christian with cancer. But this is eternal problem, eternal disease. And yet, unlike cancer, we have the cure. We know what to tell people. We've got to do it. Are we underqualified? That's something we tell ourselves a lot. You know, that's for the preacher, that's for one of the elders, that's for somebody that's been a Christian a whole lot longer than I have. Let me tell you about a woman in John 4. She was underqualified in our eyes, to say the least. She had known Jesus anytime, and she was a Samaritan in a culture that hated Samaritans so much that Jesus went through Samaria, and the apostles wondered why, and they certainly wondered why he was talking to this woman. And then she had a past. Oh, she had a sordid past. She was not, and she was a woman. I mean, even to this day, we'll think sometimes that's for the men. But she was a woman in a culture that degraded women, that thought women weren't worthy of anything. And yet, she was one of the greatest evangelists of all times. You know, I surely didn't know I was a Samaritan at all, but I surely have a common gene with this woman. Because what did she come to the well for? She came to get water, and she left her water pot. Holly, do I even need to explain that I was trying to bring my lesson here, and I left my thumb drive? And we had a series of, Miriam, were you even involved in this? I mean, at one point, somebody said, call Miriam, she has a computer. You know? But I left the thumb drive, and it was too big to email, and so here it is. The Lord is good and gracious and merciful. But she left the very thing that she came there for. Why? Because she had found something so much important, more important than water. She had found living water. And she goes and she says, come and see a man who knows everything that I've ever done. Come and see. Did you know that's evangelism? When you invite someone to come and see for themselves. Now, I know you're not underqualified for that, to invite someone to church. My grandmother became a Christian because a woman down the street invited her to church. And you can tell stories in your family, and people sitting here can tell about the time they were invited and they decided to go. And I wish I had time, but we're about to take a break. I just want you to know that in Scripture, that counts. She said, come and see for yourself. And as the chapter unfolds, we see that some people believed immediately, and then that some people chewed on it a while, and then they saw what Jesus was doing and what he was teaching, and they said, we don't believe because you taught us, but we believe now because we see for ourselves. I'll tell you that we were driving down the road one day, and my father saw a Staples building, and he said, do y'all have Staples in Huntsville? And my husband said, yeah, and we have some at church. There, we have Val Stapler, and I mean, we have some staples on the bulletin board and stuff, but we have Val Stapler. And Dad said, Val Stapler? I know him. And Scotty said, oh, no, this is somebody that works at the Arsenal in Huntsville. And he said, no, is his wife named Frances? And Scotty said, yes. And he said, no, I know. That's my sister, who was dead at that point and was my favorite aunt. She was friends with them. And they used to go out to eat and a lot of things. And I'd go over to the house and they'd be there. Yeah, I know them. And so they're in Huntsville now. He said, yeah. So I told Val, I was excited. I was saying, I hear you. And he goes, yeah, your aunt is the reason I'm a Christian. And I said, tell me more. And he said, well, we were friends and we used to go out to eat on Friday nights. And he said, one night they said, well, there's a gospel meeting going on. Let's go to that. And he said, and I was in the car with him and really didn't have any choice, so we went to the gospel meeting. And he said that then the next time they went out to eat, and they said, well, there's a gospel meeting over here. I mean, I know you've never heard of a gospel meeting on a Friday night, but it used to be the case. The first time somebody ended on Thursday, we weren't sure it was scriptural, but they got away with it. So they kept doing this, and he said, and I learned the truth. And I knew right then that if I ever made my life right, I knew there was one church, and I knew what I needed to do to be saved. And there he is. Come and see. Invite somebody. We're not underqualified. You know, it's break time. So we're going to take a break now, and then we're going to come back and look at some other things that we used to do. Things we need to get rid of, things we need to hold on to.
We're not taking a break yet. We've got to know about Celine. It's a coincidence, Celine, that just last night I'm sitting with somebody that tells me that her parents came to worship for years, and everybody thought they were a part of the congregation. And then somebody asked them about baptism, and they had never been baptized. And afterwards, somebody said, why did you wait so long? And she said, nobody ever asked us. Isn't that sad? So thank you, Celine. Celine Sparks, don't you want to take her home with you and put her in your lap and feed her and water her and get her to talk to you some more? We'll have one more lesson from her. I'm Peggy Coulter with Publishing Designs. I'm here with the books. We are a publisher, not a bookstore, but you'll find our books in bookstores. DeHoff is probably your closest one here. Anyway, other bookstores, Christian Family, and others. But Celine is right now our top-selling author, and her top-selling book is How to Train Your Dragon. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about what you'll want to take home today from her. Her first book, Because I Said So. These are sayings of her mother, and I have used this book just the last week to send an apology to someone that I broke an appointment with. And
I mean, I just was so sorry. We were doing inventory in the warehouse, and I got a call saying, Miss Peggy, are you on your way? And I said, oh, no, I forgot. I said I would be there, and I wasn't there. And there's a chapter in this book that says, you didn't mean not to. And of course, I said, I didn't mean to break that appointment, but I didn't mean